This is News 4 at 10.
After their exhaustive review of the evidence, the grand jury deliberated over 2 days, making their final decision. They determined that no probable cause exists to file any charge against Officer Wilson and returned a no true bill on each of the 5 indictments.
Breaking late this evening, Ferguson police officer Darren Wilson will not be indicted on charges in connection with the Michael Brown shooting.
That news coming less than 2 hours ago. It caused major reaction throughout our area tonight. We want to take you live to Ferguson. We've been on the air since 5 o'clock tonight, showing you these live images. Protesters taking to the streets in front of the Ferguson PD. News 4 has team coverage tonight. Let's get right to Matt Cesney in Ferguson outside the PD.
Yeah, Sharon, I can tell you right now, the police remain here in front of the police department. A small group of protesters here remain. But I can tell you what's going on down South Florissant Road. If we can swing this way, there's a car on fire. I can see another fire further on down the street. So the chaos is very close to where we are right now. St. Louis County Police and the Missouri Highway Patrol remain stationed here right in front of the Ferguson Police Department and Fire Department. They are kind of in a hold and standing position with their armored vehicle here, the police in their riot gear. Not many protesters are here. They were driven away by all of the tear gas that was dispersed throughout this street within the last hour. There is still a trace of that tear gas in the air, but that also has been moved out by the breeze, but not many protesters have returned here. We have heard reports about some windows being broken and some looting going on in this immediate area of Ferguson. At least one strip mall that's across the street from the police department has had one window broken. We can't have any idea as to what kind of arrests or what kind of injuries may have occurred, but again, it seems as if that area down there where that car fire is burning seems to be an area of concern. We haven't seen the fire department come in and move, which is interesting. They just seem content to let that car burn out there in the middle of the street. And again, some demonstrators returning again back here to the police department. But police remain in a standing position right now, I guess waiting to see what the next move from the demonstrators will be. But a very chaotic hour out here in the aftermath of that grand jury announcement here on this part of South Florissant in front of the Ferguson Police Department. Live in Ferguson, Matt Cesney, News 4.
All right, Matt, thank you. We want to acknowledge our viewers in Kansas City watching us tonight via KCTV. That's the scene in Ferguson, rather. Let's head to South St. Louis, I-44 in Grand. Ray Preston's been reporting from that area. And Ray, we understand part of I-44 has been shut down now for protesters.
Steve, it happened just a few minutes ago. Interstate 44, both eastbound and westbound, is now shut down. Go ahead and take a look for yourself. Again, we are at Grand and I-44. You can hear the police sirens. Police are moving into some sort of position, I suppose. I don't know what their plan is now. Now, this is something people were afraid would happen this evening, because what happened was the group had gathered first at Grand and Shaw. There was some chanting. There's a little bit of, there were a few comments made. Then the group marched south down there to Hartford, rather, in Grand, which is the business district there on South Grand. One young man with a bullhorn said that we are going to march up and down as long as police will let us in the streets. We're going to stay in the streets if it looks like someone may be injured, or if they won't let us march in the streets anymore. He said we will then move on to the sidewalk so everybody is safe. Then the group started marching back up north here again. And then this time they went beyond Shaw and they went all the way to Interstate 44. They spilled out onto the highway. Thankfully, no one was injured when the crowd went onto the highway, but you can see there's an 18-wheeler down there. There's a couple other vehicles stopped as well.
It seems as if this entire thing is at a critical point right now, where it could tip in either direction, and Johnson and this gentleman seem to be doing their best to try to keep this crowd under control. More people trying to approach the emergency vehicle. And again, The gentleman with the bullhorn urging everyone to get out of the way. I can tell you there's probably a lot of media crowding on the side here as well with cameras as well. Now here come more officers. They're coming out. They have weapons. They are going to make arrests. They're making arrests. Right now they're grabbing people and making arrests, and they are handcuffing them and taking them back. I don't know what this will do to the crowd, but tensions are really high right now, and there's a lot of anger all of a sudden that spilled out into the street. More police are working their way out into the crowd, and they are pushing everyone back. They're pushing everyone back. It is an incredibly chaotic scene right now.
Was the police chief a crook?
Yes.
Was the mayor a drug dealer?
Yes.
Where does the corruption stop?
Isn't it safe to say the village of Allerton, when you were mayor, was one of the most corrupt small towns in America?
The mayor, the police chief, they made the rules. The goal was to shed light upon the corruption and to eliminate the corruption.
In federal court records, he was identified as Officer Number 1, the informant who was wired for the feds and helped them catch public officials in the act of committing crimes. It all happened in the small village of Allerton, Illinois, a community with a long history of corruption. Tonight, News 4 Investigates tells a story rarely seen. You'll see the evidence and hear from the undercover informant who helped bring down what some prosecutors believe was one of the most corrupt governments in America.
We met right here. It was dark that night.
Anthony LaFleur was the undercover informant who brought down the criminals running the village of Allerton.
No comment.
Mayor Randy McCallum.
Was the mayor a drug dealer?
Yes.
Police Chief Michael Baxton.
Was the police chief a crook?
Yes.
And Street Superintendent Ronnie Cummings.
He said he was going to wrap up a gun to shoot and kill someone.
All three of them owe their prison time to the moments they spent caught on tape with LaFleur.
He was the key. He was the critical witness that we needed. He was the insider who was willing to work for the good of all of us.
Allerton is on the southeast side of East St. Louis, the poorest and most violent city in America. With a population of just 2,000 residents, hardly any tax base, and a long history of corruption, Allerton is always ripe for abuse, especially by the people who control it. But in recent years, the corruption in Allerton had become deeper and wider than ever, and it would take a unique effort to end it.
Being honest in a corrupt department is difficult. Just like being an outsider.
LaFleur began secretly gathering information for federal agents in October 2009, not long after he says McCallum made LaFleur give him his first paycheck in exchange for LaFleur getting hired as an Allerton cop. LaFleur had been a troubled kid from Allerton. He had been close to McCallum, so he had street cred, especially with the mayor.
I had his total trust.
Why do you think the mayor trusted you?
I was down and out, needed some money. He thought he could persuade me to commit illegal activities.
The first target of the investigation was Mayor McCallum.
When you get ready, let's go.
In a series of meetings in the summer of 2011, McCallum told LaFleur to steal drugs and cash from suspects, and they would share the profits. LaFleur says McCallum used some of the officers to target competing drug dealers so the mayor could eventually gain total control of the local drug market.
He was the dictator. What he say goes. You know, he was John Gotti.
The mayor?
Yes.
The mayor saw himself as a mafia boss of this community.
Correct.
McCallum proved it while he was under surveillance. With LaFleur as the informant, federal investigators caught the mayor accepting cash and what the mayor believed to be crack cocaine. But McCallum wanted a bigger score, insisting in a series of secretly taped conversations that he wanted to hit
the mother load
Damn right.
and make LaFleur famous.
Well, see, you're going to get that mother load. That's my you stay top of the line. I'm going to make you famous out here. You'll never say nothing to nobody. This is our thing, man. Nobody. Nobody.
Chris Nagus and News 4 investigates.
You get a phone call, it's from some guy offering to clean your air ducts for a bargain. They show up with fancy equipment, but as it turns out, they're not doing much more than haphazardly moving a vacuum around inside your vents. It doesn't actually clean your vents, but that's not the worst part. So we went undercover to catch these bad guys in the act. Where are you guys from?
Where are you from?
We're from St. Louis. Where are you from?
From the same place.
Something tells me Mr. Muscles is blowing smoke along with his buddy, Mr. Scare Tactic. Come on, dude. You were really proud of it just a minute ago. Tell us what you're doing. This dynamic duo is either incompetent or chock full of deception, and they are targeting homeowners all over St. Louis.
Do you feel like you got taken advantage of by these people?
Yes.
70-year-old Janet Becker of Florissant got a random call from Anytime Duct Cleaning. For $54.95, they offered to clean her air ducts. By the time it was over, it cost way more than that. She got slapped with a bill for more than $2,700.
Yeah, they just dropped it on me at the end.
Janet says the gang from Anytime told her she had mold. They installed this cheap-looking UV light, which alone cost $1,800, and powered it with strung-together extension cords with broken-off ground wires.
They did a half-ass job. I don't like to say that word, but you know.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
So,
well, I'm not a big cusser or anything.
Actually, a lot of four-letter words come to mind when you see this. A letter from her heating and cooling guy who serviced her system for 15 years saying there's never been any evidence of mold. Janet's got plenty of company.
They just really screwed me around. That's what they did.
83-year-old Dale Ponce of Ellisville was offered a similar deal. Air duct cleaning for $44.95. By the time it was over, he was out more than $600. Turns out Dale heard a similar sales pitch.
You know, everything was moldy.
That's par for the course at Anytime. The company has an F rating with the Better Business Bureau. Their tactic? Offer cheap air duct cleaning to get in the door, then drive up the cost by claiming there's mold. So I hired my own air duct cleaning crew to put Anytime to the test.
No company is going to come out and do any service, especially a duct cleaning that's going to be invasive in the ductwork, for $50 to $5.
Patty Clisham owns and operates Ducts. She says this Crestwood home would cost a minimum $600 to clean properly. Her crew spent several hours cleaning the home system from top to bottom and carefully inspected the blower.
No mold, nothing that even would remotely, we would have a suspect of mold or any type of growth.
With a clean bill of health, we called Anytime and rigged the house with hidden cameras to catch the action. Patty, our air duct cleaning expert, posed as the homeowner.
Now from the duct cleaning.
Yes.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm fine.
Crew member 1 seems friendly enough. Here's crew member 2 rolling in a giant machine. Things start off fine. The pitchman even tells Patty the vents look pretty clean. But when it comes to the blower, trouble's lurking.
It's look like mold.
Oh, it does? It looks like mold?
Yes.
Yikes, that sounds scary. Not to be outdone by this claim about what the bogus mold can lead to.
It can make cancer, allergic, it's not good.
Really? Cancer?
Of course. If you're molding your system, it easily eat the wires, eats the metal inside, so eventually it will die, the system will die.
Oh my gosh, the mold will eat the wires?
Yes.
Wire-eating mold? Now that sounds terrifying. But don't worry, our scare tactic guy can fix it.
Usually we take between 200 to 400 with a more process remover.
Whatever. Patty sticks to her guns and says she won't pay more than $54.95. Frustrated, scare tactic guy goes outside to call a supervisor and comes back with a lower price. Patty says no. Scare tactic guy belittles her.
I am not lazy.
I've seen enough. All this talk about mold is getting old. Sir, could we talk to you about this wire-eating mold that you were just discussing with this homeowner? Could we talk to you guys about this? Could you tell us about the job you just did here?
Can you go away?
No, I can't go away. Tell us what you did. We've got it all on tape. We've got plenty of complaints. You guys had to do another job now?
Yeah.
Another job, another dollar, and potentially another battle with wire-eating mold. Bottom line, professional air duct cleaning companies won't touch your system for $54, so if you get a call offering one of these deals, just hang up. This scam went beyond the wire-eating mold baloney. Tomorrow morning during our 6:30 half hour, I'll show you what else these guys say they found in our system. Chris Nagus, News 4.
News 4 is in storm mode.
More frightening weather tonight. This ominous funnel-like cloud captured by a News 4 viewer over Washington, Missouri, and posted on our Facebook page.
And tonight, this is in Baldwin, the sights and sounds of some powerful hail. This video also on our KMOV Facebook page.
And a frightening wait for help for a motorist trapped by fast and furious floodwaters as heavy rains force creeks and streams out of their banks.
And with the rains, a tornado, one touching down in University City, bringing a visit from the governor. All this during a second day of frightening severe weather.
Good evening. We are in storm mode as yet another wave of strong, dangerous storms blows through St. Louis tonight.
We have News 4 crews fanned out across the area. Live team coverage of tonight's fast-moving storm. But first, team coverage.
Well, and it has taken a team here alongside meteorologists Matt Chambers and Katie Horner. We have been tracking these threats of squall-line tornadoes throughout the evening. Those are very difficult, notoriously difficult to track. I am happy to report we have no tornado warnings, no severe thunderstorm warnings right now. I'm also happy to report there's no major damage from the second round that hit this afternoon and evening. We still have some big-time storms, though, and the cold front has yet to come through. So let me show you what's happening, what to expect over the next few hours.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sharon Reed.
And I'm Steve Savard. This is a News 4 special report. In about 1 hour, we will hear the grand jury's decision in the deadly shooting of Mike Brown by Ferguson police officer Darren Wilson.
We will bring you live coverage for the next hour as we prepare for the announcement. Let's go live, a live look into the St. Louis County courtroom. We are awaiting the prosecutor, Bob McCullough.
Just a few hours ago, McCullough's office announced it was ready to release the grand jury decision in the Michael Brown shooting investigation. News 4 has live team coverage of today's announcement.
Our news crews fanning out from Clayton to Ferguson. They're ready to get all the reaction for you on this announcement. We'll also have a special News 4 Investigate studio up and running right now. They are getting ready to comb through any testimony or documents released by McCullough's office.
And outside the county courthouse in Clayton, News 4 Investigates Chris Nagus is stationed live while Deanna Zoga is inside the courtroom awaiting the decision. Let's start with Chris. And Chris, it's been quiet throughout the early part of the evening. What's the situation in Clayton there now?
Steve, I've got to tell you, the situation remains unchanged here in Clayton. It's quiet out here. The streets are blocked off. I'm standing here on Carondelet at South Central where the intersection is closed to traffic. There are a lot of barricades that have been put up, but there have been no problems here at the St. Louis County Justice Center tonight. Now, that announcement will take place up here on the third floor. Steve, as you mentioned, my colleague Deanna Zoga is inside. She will be there when that decision is handed down, when we learn what the grand jury decided in this case. I talked to police a short time ago. They say there have been no problems out here tonight. The reaction from the businesses out here, it's mixed. Some of them closed early. Some of them remain open at this hour and say they will remain open unless there are any problems out here. But they're hoping that there are no issues out here around the Justice Center tonight. I've seen police in the area, of course. I also saw what appeared to be about a dozen members of the Missouri National Guard. They entered the Justice Center around 6 o'clock tonight. As we heard the governor say, they would be here for a support role throughout this process. So we did see some of those Guard members enter this facility. We'll remain on the ground and we will be outside as this situation continues to develop here in Clayton. But for now, reporting live, Chris Nagus, News 4.
A live look again from Sky Zoom 4 over the scene in Ferguson. This is near the intersection of Airport and Florissant. This is just a little bit north of the Ferguson Police Department. We have seen more and more protesters gathering in the last hour or so at this location. Sky Zoom 4 on the scene live right now.
So protesters in the street. Our Matt Cesney is not far, about a quarter of a mile from here. Actually, this location is closer to City Hall. Of course, these protesters have been meeting, they've been coordinating over social media, and they promised a response this in advance of the grand jury announcement in just under 1 hour.
All this leading up to that grand jury announcement coming up, expected at about 8 o'clock from St. Louis County Prosecutor Bob McCullough. And again, we're going to stay on the air through McCullough's announcement to bring you comprehensive coverage of this highly anticipated decision.
It has been, of course, more than 3 months since the shooting death of Michael Brown. A lot of information has been made public about that day in August, as well as the 18-year-old. Brown, who lived with his grandmother in the Canfield Apartments, was walking down West Florissant Avenue with a friend when Officer Darren Wilson approached the men. After a brief confrontation, Brown was shot and killed. He appeared to be unarmed at the time.
Toxicology reports indicated traces of marijuana in Brown's system. According to his family, Brown had just graduated high school and was scheduled to start classes at Vatterott College the Monday following his shooting.
Much less, though, has been made public about the officer, Darren Wilson. Few images of him have ever been released. This picture of him, it's from February, when he was presented an award from Ferguson Chief of Police Tom Jackson.
Now, we do know Wilson is a 6-year veteran of various police forces. In fact, he served 2 years in the Jennings Police Department and spent the past 4 years in the Ferguson Police Department. He's remained on paid administrative leave since the shooting, and despite many Brown supporters calling for his arrest.
So the grand jury has reached a decision, but they've been reviewing evidence in the Michael Brown shooting case for weeks.
Yeah, we're now less than an hour away from hearing their decision. Here's what they have to decide: whether or not there's enough evidence to indict Officer Wilson.
We're going to look into each of the possible charges as well as Wilson's defense in more detail in just a moment. But first, we look back at the events of the last few months which have led up to tonight.
August 9th, just after noon, Mike Brown was walking in the middle of West Florissant Avenue when Officer Darren Wilson approached Brown and his friend. Moments later, Wilson would end up shooting the 18-year-old just outside the Canfield Apartments. Tensions rose as Brown's body lay in the street for hours.
We would come to learn the Ferguson Police Department was waiting on assistance from St. Louis County Police and the coroner. County officers had spent the day in South County dealing with a gunman inside St. Anthony's Hospital.
An armed intruder, armed with a handgun. He was also wearing a ski mask.
Meanwhile, back in Ferguson, hundreds gathered along the streets of Canfield throughout the evening and into Sunday, all while tensions mounted. The next day, police hold a press conference and announce Brown attacked Wilson before he was fatally shot.
Within the police car, there was a struggle over the officer's weapon. There was at least one shot fired within the car.
That night, a peaceful vigil turned violent, followed by violent night after violent night.
Don't be a traitor to Michael Brown in the name of you, man.
By August 11th, national civil rights leaders, including the Reverend Al Sharpton, were in town to meet with Brown's family.
It was Thursday, August 14th, when President Obama addressed the nation on the events in Ferguson.
There is never an excuse for violence against police or for those who would use this tragedy as a cover for vandalism or looting. There's also no excuse for police to use excessive force against peaceful protests.
Meanwhile, the protests continue. Governor Nixon announces a change to the security detail. Captain Ron Johnson of the Highway Patrol is now the man in charge.
I plan on tonight myself walking to the quick trip that has been called Ground Zero and meeting with the folks there myself tonight. And so we are going to have a different approach and have the approach that we're in this together.
But the following day, August 15th, tensions rise again. Ferguson police released the name of Officer Wilson, but not before also releasing the images of Mike Brown involved in a robbery just minutes before the shooting.
It pissed them off. It pissed them off, and for one reason it did, because it muddied the water.
On Saturday, August 16th, Governor Nixon declares a state of emergency. The National Guard arrives Monday. Tensions mount again as St. Louis police shoot and kill a man armed with a knife just a few miles from Ferguson.
He got his gun out.
Almost a week after the president's national address on Ferguson, U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder arrives in St. Louis. He's briefed on the federal investigations in the shooting of Mike Brown.
And if we get community involvement, we can turn it around, allow people to express themselves, as that's what we do in the United States.
Tensions and protests start to ease before Brown is laid to rest on Monday, August 25th.
This is about justice. This is about fairness.
Since Michael Brown's funeral, we've seen protests inside St. Louis County government.
If Darren Wilson get off this case, y'all better bring out every army in the city, because it's going down.
Angry mobs gathering in the Shaw neighborhood after an off-duty St. Louis officer shot and killed an armed teenager.
What you doing here, bro? Get the f*** out of here, man, with your coward boys. With your coward terrorists, get the f*** out of here.
And continued calls for a decision from the grand jury.
This is different. This is being handled differently than most cases,
which for the past months have only been hearing evidence on this case. New at 6, last year community activists predicted that some of our most troubled neighborhoods were on the edge of lawlessness. That's because the communities had been neglected and oppressed for so many years. News 4 Investigates' Craig Cheatham was told that all that would take was an event that would rip the scab off those deep wounds.
Steve, that event proved to be the deadly police shooting of unarmed black teenager Mike Brown. But the neighborhood's distrust of law enforcement and a general feeling of isolation and oppression began long before Mike was killed, and it can be felt in many other mostly poor black communities too. This week, Ferguson has looked like a police state.
It's not funny to us.
The anger.
What we gonna do about tomorrow, sister?
The confrontations. And most of us never saw it coming. But the deep resentment and feelings of isolation and oppression have been there for a very long time.
You can read about things in the paper, but it means nothing to you if you don't live there and understand the outcry.
Right now, our neighborhoods are war zones like never before.
A year ago, James Clark, a vice president of Better Family Life, told me decades of neglect in some of our most vulnerable communities was creating so much anger and unrest that if it wasn't addressed, it could explode, just like what happened in Ferguson.
And our young people are becoming more and more brazen. So we've got to get very, very serious, or we will see St. Louis almost come to a state of lawlessness.
There's a 45 minutes in between your eyes.
Some of it is based on the way people, especially African Americans, are treated by some cops. Like this example in Brooklyn, Illinois, captured by a camera on a local officer.
Like a airplane. Go ahead and cuff him.
In Ferguson and many other communities, police are far more likely to pull over black drivers and search them, even though a report by the Missouri Attorney General's office says whites are more likely to have drugs on them.
They killed my baby boy.
During our investigations over the last decade, many residents in some of the region's poorest and most violent neighborhoods have told us they don't trust the police.
Police won't do nothing. Come on now. But they say they still looking for them. You're not looking for them.
And that the cops often treat them with little respect.
3 of my sons has been shot.
Kimberly Schooler's 21-year-old son Jordan was shot and killed in East St. Louis. But despite that, she refuses to cooperate with police on any other case. If you knew who shot somebody, you wouldn't tell the police.
No, because they're not going to do nothing. So you put your own life in danger because they're not going to protect you. They don't care nothing about you.
That belief doesn't reflect the view of all residents, but it does echo the lack of trust in law enforcement and the fear of some of her neighbors. During our documentary, A Vicious Cycle, we explored the pushback toward cops. Terrell Golson, who died since our interview, was a former gang leader and enforcer.
20 years ago, you'd be running and trying to hide and all that from the police. Yeah, back then you would.
Not today.
No, today is what it is, you know what I'm saying? You up yours, I'm up mine, we're gonna see who get the first draw, you know?
But that's only part of the problems in the areas James Clark talked about.
No one feels safe today.
When you combine that with extreme poverty, high unemployment, low percentages of home ownership, and single-parent families that move frequently, creating even more instability, and then add racial segregation and the feeling by a race of people that they are isolated, you have an environment that is stressful and broken to a degree that many of us can't imagine unless we live there and experience it every day.
We can either sit back and continue to watch our our society spiral out of control, or we can say, let's get smart about it and let's begin to do things differently, because the way that we do things today is not working.
Another factor at play in Ferguson, an overwhelmingly white police force in a city that is mostly black. Researchers say when all of those factors interact, the situation can become volatile and greatly increases the chances of violence in a community. Craig Cheatham, News 4.
Well, many Americans pay part or all of their prescription drugs out of pocket.
But many don't know that how much you pay, that depends on where you buy those drugs. Going from one store to another, just blocks apart, it could cost you hundreds of dollars. News 4 investigative reporter Mike Colombo shows us how and why in part one of a special two-part News 4 investigation.
Spring is business owner Dan Spangler's busy season. This year, he asked his doctor for something to help manage the load.
Just kind of stress from work, anxiety, and I wanted to get something to just take the edge off a little bit.
His doctor prescribed quetiapine, but Dan's stress levels increased when he went to the pharmacy.
They called into Walgreens because it was convenient, and I went there and they said $379, I believe it was, and I said for a month. And they said, yeah, and I thought, well, I can't afford that.
Dan doesn't have insurance and pays cash for prescriptions, so he asked his doctor to do some price comparisons.
And found the medicine shop and said it's $50 there for the same thing.
$330 less for the same prescription.
It's just shocking that there's that much difference.
We contacted Walgreens' corporate office regarding this pricing predicament. The company's 358-word response talked a lot about insurance and discount programs, but not one word addressed why Walgreens is charging $330 more than Medicine Shop for the exact same prescription.
How long you got? I could talk all day on this.
North County pharmacist Chris Gerritsen shed light on the issue. He's a board member for the Missouri Pharmacy Association and says Dan's drug is a generic. Recently, major drug companies consolidated, and the United States has cracked down on foreign manufacturers. With fewer drug makers, he says generic prices are skyrocketing.
Things that patients take every day for disease states have gone up 10-fold, 20-fold, sometimes 25-fold, and basically overnight.
But that still doesn't explain the huge variation in prescription prices between stores. In fact, it seems no one can or will give us an answer. One source says prices could hinge on what different insurance plans will pay for the same drug. Either way, you, the consumer, can get buried if you're not aware of this. Right, Dan?
Even matter. Yeah, you'd think it'd be the other way around. If you don't have insurance, they'd try to help you a little bit.
We did some digging to find out what other pharmacies charge, and you won't believe what we found. We'll have the results tonight on News 4 at 10. I'm Mike Colombo, News 4.
News 4 investigates.
It's 4 o'clock and he's right on time, but the man approaching this North St. Louis home isn't expecting to see me there.
Mr. James, good to see you today. How are you?
You'll meet him soon enough. He thought he was coming to see Tashay Williams.
Do you feel like you're being harassed?
Yeah, I was.
In October, Tashay got this letter addressed to her from Chaz Dirk Lee and Associates, Theft Division. Whoa, looks official. It threatened prosecution, a felony, conspiracy, grand larceny. Attached, a copy of a check made out to someone she doesn't even know. In December, another letter with a picture of her driver's license and a check made out to her with the word counterfeit stamped on the front. Then, a knock on the door.
He wanted me to get him cash or a check on the spot.
He said his name was Anthony James. His letters have made it into mailboxes all over St. Louis.
It says I could be arrested for a felony theft. He called my grandma, threatened her with arrest, said that she could also be arrested for hiding a felon.
Jennifer West of St. Peter's got one. So did Trinae Kelly.
They were going to lock me up. I was going to be prosecuted for fraud for writing bad checks.
To be clear, it's unclear as to whether any of these women actually owe anyone any money. Some of the supposed debt dates back to 2007, and there's no evidence it's even owed. So Trinae called Rob Swearingen at Legal Services of Eastern Missouri to file a lawsuit.
Is this guy breaking the law?
He's breaking the federal law for debt collectors.
in numerous ways.
For starters, debt collectors can't threaten arrest or prosecution, and they're not allowed to use fake names. Since his business is fake, we had a hard time finding his true identity. Until I got a call from Tashay, she wanted to get even.
Hello, can I help you?
Hi, Mr. Anthony James.
Speaking.
Tashay arranged a meeting to talk about her supposed debt. When he arrived, I was there to talk about his supposed business.
Mr. James, good to see you today. How are you?
All right.
Chris Nagus from Channel 4. Could we talk to you about these letters that you're sending out to people on behalf of your debt collection company?
Well, they've been authorized. What's the problem with it?
Well, you're threatening arrest. You're telling people they can be prosecuted. What authority do you have to tell people that?
Come from my attorney.
Who's your attorney?
You don't need to know that.
Chaz Dirkley and Associates. Tell me what that is.
It's a collection agency.
It's not registered with the state of Missouri.
It's a new company.
Well, it's not that new. I mean, people have been complaining about it for a while.
Well, it's all legit.
I mean, are we supposed to just take your word for that?
Yeah, take my word for it.
About that, whose word?
And what's your name?
Anthony James.
And that's your real name?
That's my name.
Can we see your identification?
No, no need to.
Forget it. I'll just run your plates. According to the Department of Revenue, Go Ahead is registered to Randall Lang, giving Swearingen enough information to file a real lawsuit. James, Lang, whoever he is, still thinks he's the good guy.
Don't you want to stay above board? If you're dealing with people who are criminals, don't you want to do things the right way?
Right. We will correct the problem.
So what is the problem? What is the problem then? What are you saying the problem is at this point?
This conversation is over.
Bottom line, this guy is breaking the law by threatening arrest, simulating court proceedings, threatening prosecution, using a fake name, and he's running an unregistered business. If you got one of his letters or have a scam or ripoff you want me to check out, send me a message on my KMOV Facebook page. Chris Nagus, News 4.
Today, News 4 is proud to partner with local organizations for our Thanks for Giving campaign. You'll see a number of Channel 4 employees at Deerberg's locations helping collect food for those in need. And Megan Danahay is one of them. Megan, how are things going out there at Deerberg's?
Things are great. We've seen a steady flow of really great folks. We've collected a lot of canned foods, of course, non-perishable foods, and even money. Cash donations have been really coming in here at the Deerbergs. We're at the West Oak location in Creve Coeur. That's off Olive, very close to 270. And we'll be here until 7 o'clock. Again, News 4 teaming up with Operation Food Search. They feed almost 200,000 people every month. A lot of them are children. So even if you have to pop in and grab a last-minute dinner, if you could pick up any kind of canned good, that would be helpful. $1 in the pot, even spare change in the pot would be helpful to get those community people fed all over the St. Louis area. Right now we're going to talk to Steve Harris. He's going to tell us a little bit more about how Operation Food Search works.
It's this nice blue tub here. You ever wondered what becomes of those big blue barrels? Well, they end up here at the Operation Food Search headquarters, where the stuff is distributed to food pantries, soup kitchens, and shelters.
This is going to help us reach out to hundreds, thousands of people really, and provide meals for the holiday season that they wouldn't enjoy otherwise.
Around 190,000 people, and a third of those are children. And if you're wondering why you see more of these this time of year, well, there's a reason for that. So is the need greater this time of year? Or?
Well, hunger is a problem that needs to be addressed 365 days a year, but during the holiday season, our thoughts naturally turn to others, and what better time to get involved and help people who are less fortunate than ourselves.
So next time you toss a can into one of these, just know that you're helping Operation Food Search feed a family.
That was Steve Harris. Thanks so much for that. Of course, I'll be at the West Oak Deerbergs until 7 o'clock. Help us feed the hungry.
You still have time to drop off toys, winter gear for kids, and gift cards for teenagers at Busch Stadium. News 4's Claire Kellett is there at the site of our 3rd annual holiday gift drive. Claire, how's it looking out there?
Awesome. Emily, look, check out all the presents we have collected since 6 o'clock this morning. We are inside Ballpark Village. Our holiday toy drive wraps up at 1, so we're in like our last minute push right now. We need gifts for toys up to 13 years old and then gift cards for 13 to 18 years old. And These ladies here, they wrap them. You don't have to do any of that. Just bring your new unwrapped toys and gift cards to Ballpark Village right along Clark Street between here and Busch Stadium. And the gifts, again, are going to children in Ferguson, children at Scott Air Force Base, and children who are in foster families. We also give you a gift as well, hot chocolate and a Christmas stocking with a Cardinals teddy bear. So, Emily, 1 o'clock, time is running out. We hope to see all of you here.
Live from KMOV, News 4 is covering breaking news.
Stunning images you're not going to see anywhere else coming in from Ferguson within the last hour. We've seen flash bombs, police launching tear gas canisters throughout the area. Another volatile night in Ferguson is unfolding.
It is night 5 of the clashes between police and people on the streets of Ferguson.
Yeah, from the video, you can see and understand how dangerous things have become tonight.
That's right, and we want to tell you that our reporters are embedded in this. Let's take another look and listen to their point of view.
Y'all gonna burn somebody's house down over this shit? Y'all head, y'all.
Our photographer Scott Thomas capturing what's happening on the ground tonight from that astounding perspective behind the lines.
Yeah, he was there, right there, as the blasts of canisters were going off, and Scott Thomas joins us on the phone right now. And Scott, you were embedded in what looked like a dangerous situation. At any point, did you fear for your safety or anyone else's safety around you?
Well, Steve, I tell you, the police here exercised all manner of restraint. They received verbal abuses all day long, and it wasn't until things were actually thrown at them that they took action with tear gas and advanced. Yeah, it is a scary situation when someone's firing projectiles at you, and I managed to be on the upwind side of the tear gas, so I didn't get a lot of effects that way. But this situation was only occurred when bottles or rocks were thrown at the police, and that is when they used tear gas.
Scott, you've been out there for days, really nights now. Have you seen the tension diminish in any way, or does it just keep seeming to escalate?
Well, it seemed like today that things were calming down, and then we had this little flare-up, and it was once again caused by a small percentage of individuals within the group of this protest.
All right, Scott, thank you very much. Scott Thomas, our photographer, in the middle of the unrest tonight in Ferguson.
Compared to other nights.
Another News 4 crew in the middle of an interview when a blast of tear gas goes off. A scary night for many and more protests.
That's right. It's a very fluid situation as police are telling people to get out of the way. We have several crews covering this situation. News 4's Julian Johnson is in Ferguson tonight to start things off. Julian.
Well, Sharon, we're at the corner of Lang and Ward, and it is again a tense scene out here. I'm going to step out of the way so you can see police down there at the corner of West Florissant and Lang. I'm sorry. It's hard to tell even how many officers are down there because they're shining this bright light to encourage people to leave. That's the message they keep repeating. They want people to disperse and to go home. However, not everyone is getting that message. There are still some people out here that are lingering, refusing to go home, shouting back at officers. And this all started with a peaceful protest earlier this afternoon, but at this point, it's clear that that message was lost. A protest aimed at peace.
This is not an isolated incident. This is a build-up to what's been going on in this community for a very long time, and the people need to be heard.
Ended with guns aimed at them.
Return to your vehicles. Return to your homes.
it's sad because that's not the intent of any of this here.
The march meant to show support for 18-year-old Mike Brown and the ongoing push for justice in his case, but with some protesters there peacefully and others focused on disruption by blocking traffic and sitting in the road, officers nearby took back control.
We're asking that you continue down Canfield.
I think some of those protesters go out there with the intention of trying to provoke police.
Absolutely. I think a lot of them, and many of them are not from our neighborhood. They're coming in and they're using this as an opportunity.
So you think if a little less police presence, things would be better?
Yeah, I mean, when they show a lot of force like that and M16s and everything like that, that kind of riles them up.
Today's images similar to the ones our camera caught last night. Some demonstrators seemingly trying to provoke officers to fire. They didn't, and the man walked away, but it's one example of the thin line between peaceful protest and chaos.
So when we see violence and we see protests that turn to violence, it frustrates us, it grieves our heart. And not only does it grieve our heart, but it denigrates the memory of a young man who died on the street of Ferguson.
So back out here live, you can see officers still standing guard, encouraging people to go home. As you saw in the video that we showed you earlier, they did fire tear gas, but again, people still out here lingering. There are several roads closed, and they're hoping that that move also encourages any protests to be done for tonight. We are live in Ferguson. Julian Johnson, News 4.
Be prepared. Everybody be prepared.
And more video from West Florissant and Chambers. People wearing masks in protest preparing to be tear gassed. As the sun set in Ferguson, protesters were asked to go home, a request by the city and its chief of police. And judging by what we've seen tonight, that request is being denied. News 4's Corey Stark on West Florissant. And Corey, you were right there where the tear gas canisters were thrown in.
Sharon, that's right, and we've seen a lot of tear gas used tonight, as Julian said, as police try to get these individuals that are out here to go home. And we're on West Florissant now. You can see crowds of people still lingering around, and they've wanted them to come up closer, as I said, north on West Florissant. But you can see the chaos that broke out when the tear gas was used to disperse those crowds. As you mentioned, we were right in the thick of things in the middle of an interview, and the police, is the next thing we know, they were using this tear gas, and we started bolting the other way. You saw hundreds of people that were out there running the other way, and it was only about 5 minutes ago that that tear gas started making its way up to where we are right now on West Florissant. Our eyes started watering. We began to cough, so you can only imagine those people that were on the front lines when this tear gas was used. Now, a lot of people we talked to said that it was a peaceful protest, but then the police said that the protesters were getting violent, and this is what one person who was on the front lines had to say to me.
We just said hands up, don't shoot.
Is that all you were saying?
That's all we were saying. Hands up, don't shoot.
Were you in the front line up there?
In the front line, yes. And they just start shooting.
And we've heard that from a lot of people, that they simply were on the front line that say don't shoot. But you heard Scott's account earlier. He was a little closer to that front line where he saw some maybe rocks being thrown at some of the officers. But I did just talk with actually a pastor of a local church who was with 8 members of his church group. They were on the front line as well, and he said that they didn't see anything violent happen. But again, that's what police are saying happened that caused them using this tear gas and dispersing these crowds. Of course, we'll ask police about that as soon as we can. We'll send it back to you guys.
All right, thank you, Corey Stark, reporting from Ferguson. 2 journalists covering the protests in Ferguson arrested inside of a McDonald's tonight. You're looking at a picture tweeted out by Huffington Post reporter Ryan Riley, who was detained along with Wesley Lowry, who works for the Washington Post. Riley says SWAT teams told them they were held for, quote, not packing their bags quick enough. Both journalists have been released. Ferguson, Florissant schools have called off classes this week. The first day of school was supposed to begin tomorrow. That won't happen because the district says it needs time for the situation in North County to stabilize. The goal is to start classes on Monday, August 18th. There's no timetable in place for the police shooting investigation involving Mike Brown's death. Prosecuting attorney Bob McCullough made that known this afternoon in a press conference. He also says his office will use the same investigation tactics it uses in all cases. They're also looking for more witnesses and video to be submitted as evidence.
If the grand jury's determination at the end of all that is that there is no indictment found, then all of that information, all of the transcripts of the testimony of every witness, every video clip, every piece of paper, every photograph, every bit of physical evidence, absolutely everything will be immediately made public. And I will be available at that point to answer specific questions about anything and everything.
He also says he's still waiting to talk to several key witnesses. One of them is Brown's friend Dorian Johnson, who was standing near Brown when he was shot and killed. Sharon?
Steve Ferguson's police chief has handed over 911 tapes to attorneys so they can be vetted. Those phone calls are expected to be released after that happens. At the same time, computer hackers were at it again. The group Anonymous released recordings claiming it is St. Louis County Police Dispatch. St. Louis County Police Chief John Belmar, meantime, says he cannot speak about the tapes the group released to YouTube. The audio file is an hour and 50 minutes long. Now, the strain of Ferguson police and the county is on high. Another long night in Ferguson seems to be taking shape. Matt Cesny spoke with the county's chief about the toll this is taking on his department and his officers.
Yeah, that's right, Sharon. In fact, the county police chief had told me earlier tonight he was hopeful that the tensions would begin to subside here in Ferguson, but clearly that hasn't happened at this point. Even from where we are here at the police command post, we could hear those tear gas canisters being fired into the street. The chief also wouldn't say how many officers are here tonight, but he would tell us they are working 12-hour shifts. All vacations in the department have been canceled, and he says his officers are holding up well as they stare down dangerous situations. St. Louis County's police chief stood outside headquarters and said he hopes things will quiet down in Ferguson because so far it's been way too dangerous.
During the last 4 days that during the protest, there's been dozens and dozens of times when shots have been fired in the neighborhood. So my officers have acted with an incredible amount of restraint.
Early Wednesday morning, restraint gave way to gunfire when an officer shot a 19-year-old suspect wearing a mask and holding a gun, according to the chief. The suspect, Ishmael Britton, is in critical condition.
I don't see anything on this shooting regarding the justification that I would question. I think it's reasonable to expect that when a police officer has a handgun pointed at him at close range, that he's in certainly imminent fear of losing his life.
It's an incident Chief Belmar hopes doesn't happen again. Yet today, when protesters took to the streets, there was yet another confrontation with police on West Florissant.
We're agitating them at this moment, and so therefore they're now seeing the frustration of the people in our community.
And it does seem to be continuing tonight. Chief Belmar also says he is managing to keep enough police officers to patrol the rest of St. Louis County. And he also says he has worked out a plan with other area police chiefs to try and put a stop to any looting that may move beyond the Ferguson area into other parts of St. Louis County as well. We're live in Ferguson. Matt Cesny, News 4.
And another live look for you tonight in Ferguson. You see a tank right there moving in. We've seen tear gas flowing, launched into that situation that is still very tense.
Coming up, another eyewitness to the shooting of Michael Brown describes what she saw on Saturday afternoon. That's coming up when News 410 continues.
Welcome back. A live look, night 5 since the shooting death of Michael Brown, and there is still unrest on the streets of Ferguson.
And more confrontation tonight between police and protesters. We'll be keeping track of this throughout the newscast and overnight, and then, of course, into News 4 this morning. That is surveillance footage of looters at the Phillips 66 on Shodo. There's audio in the footage which isn't typical. St. Louis police think these looters are some of the same people who broke into a shoe carnival grabbing all kinds of shoes. Angry and even embarrassed, that's how some people are describing their response to those images of looting and other destruction in the wake of Michael Brown's death. They're telling Jasmine Huda, enough is enough.
Steve, that's right. This is the Phillips 66, a gas station not in the city of Ferguson, but in the city of St. Louis. And it was looted, and so was the shoe carnival. And tonight, many people are using strong words and emotion to express their disappointment.
Here's the video
And here was the immediate reaction.
Oh my God, that does not justify Mike Brown's death in any shape, form, or fashion.
I'm really embarrassed. I didn't raise my sons that way.
And what are they taking? Shoes, wigs, hot dogs.
All of the above. Crimes of opportunity in South St. Louis, Brentwood, and University City, just to name a few, in the wake of the Ferguson unrest. Eddie Taylor lives in the same complex as Michael Brown's family and calls these cases self-serving and destructive.
To think that your own people are acting that way, they're destroying jobs. Only black people worked in those stores. Now they don't have a job.
I'm embarrassed as a black woman. I really am. My people are just tearing the city up, and we're not going to have anything. And I'm serious. I'm really heartbroken right now. I'm really. Just say it. I don't know what else to say about it. Just say it.
It's an emotional issue for you.
Yeah. Very.
And at a time when emotions are running high, a message about what these incidents do and don't represent.
If they had anything to do with Mike Brown, then they would be with the family. They would be doing decent things. They would be just doing praying for him. It has nothing to do with Michael. Nothing whatsoever.
Jasmine Huda, News 4.
A Missouri state senator hit with tear gas during protesting in Ferguson.
She says she's angry at the military-style force police are using to control crowds. 14th District Representative Maria Chappelle Nadal says she's outraged and offended by the aggression police are using. She tells us she and 150 young protesters were hit with tear gas during a peaceful protest Monday night. Now she's calling out the Missouri Highway Patrol.
They have every right to assemble freely and to express themselves without having tear gas thrown at them. And oh, by the way, tear gas was thrown at me and we could not breathe. And that's by the State Highway Patrol. And I approved their budget, so you know I'm off.
When Nadal questioned Ferguson Police Chief Tom Jackson about the situation during a press conference earlier today, he was unaware that had happened. Another witness to the Brown shooting has come forward with what she says happened leading up to the deadly shooting. This is cell phone video she shot moments after the shooting. Mitchell says she saw the door close on the police car as the officer sat inside and Brown stood outside of it. She claims the two were grasping at each other as she looked through the window of the police car.
At this time after the shot, the kid breaks away and he started running away from the cop. The cop follows him and kept shooting, and the kid body jerked as if he was hit. And after his body jerked, he turned around, he puts his hands up, and the cop just continues to walk up on him and shoot him until he goes all the way down.
Tiffany Mitchell also goes on to tell us she hasn't slept in days and says she is an emotional wreck.